Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Secrets for an Inspirational Life. I hope that wherever you are on this planet today, that there is peace and light and beauty that surrounds you. I have to share with you actually a beautiful quote that I read, um, and it is something that really touched my heart. And it has actually to do with my wonderful guest today, I have to say. And the quote goes like this: I do not understand the mystery of grace, only that it meets us where we are and does not leave us where it found us. And that's by a lady called Anne Lamott. And it's something that I connected with my guest today, and it's so rather beautiful. And the mystery of grace, what a mystical and really divine favor upon us from our Creator is that every second of our life is really encompassing that grace, that love, and that sheer beauty that we as souls are. And we forget, we simply forget, and we shouldn't forget. It is something that we need to remind ourselves of, we need to remind each other of, that we are the most extraordinary creation that exists. And with that, I am absolutely delighted, truly, to welcome Alex Carberry, who is my fantastic guest today. Alex is an accomplished medical herbalist, author, poet, and activist. He was raised in Guyana, South America, on the edge of the Amazon jungle. He brings Sufi cosmology and the European philosophical and literary tradition together, with a strong emphasis on issues of health, that is, in the physical, psychological, economic, social, and spiritual way, to bear on the human need for renewal and healing. His passion is understanding the pattern languages. Thus, he has spent a lifetime studying and decoding the patterns around him. In medicine, he extends and clarifies the Greco Arab tradition with a revolutionary fusion that draws upon the Chinese and Ayurvedic practices as well as modern medicine. Alex does so many things. Really, you will hear about it shortly. Alex also runs clinics and does workshops and lectures, as well as being a popular author. Today, he shares his extraordinary life journey. Welcome, dear Alex.
Thank you for having me. Hi.
It's a pleasure. How are you today?
I'm well.
Good. How are things in your world?
Well, as always, you've got difficulties and ease and beautiful things and terrible things happening, often all at the same time. And
yeah,
life continues in the present tense.
Yes, the kaleidoscope of life.
Yeah.
Everything and nothing in a way. There's so many sort of different aspects and different ways to look at life. And I think that's important to find our own way, as opposed to the ways that do not feel, that give us peace in our heart. I think that's the most important thing. Now, Alex, your work is extraordinary. It's wonderful work. But let's start somewhere and tell us a little bit about what you do and how it all began.
God.
We've got to have a starting point, because to unravel this great mystery of your work and what you do, we have to start somewhere. So let's start at the beginning.
Well, I mean, I treat people, and I think that term is one that I'm becoming even more uncomfortable with. I think I aid people on their healing journey, because often when we are ill, we don't we think that we got ill at the point that the pain appears. However, before we got ill, there were things that were happening, and then there is almost a crisis point. And at the crisis point, often then symptoms begin to appear. And part of what I do is help people to understand the way that their lives fit together, and and then they begin to grasp almost the inevitability of some crisis out of this very existential difficulties that they have been facing, and that so that they don't view a healing journey as merely the disappearance of the symptoms that they came with, but they understand that they have to heal on a deeper level so that the symptoms are not necessary. Because often what happens is that we swap one set of symptoms for another. And you see this often with addiction, in which people will move from one type of addiction to almost a safer or more palatable form. So it's about, my work is really about the need for deep healing. And because our civilization, is a European civilization. And so I think it's very important that we quite nakedly understand what that involves. Because we're human beings, and we tell stories to show ourselves in the best light that we can. I think that's a fundamentally human trait. But what we need to do is when we find ourselves in difficulty, to be able to take a hard, naked look, on a very honest look, a ruthlessly honest look, to understand how we got there, and having got to where we are, if we continue as we are, where we're going. And if we can do that, often we can find the energy or the will to change. And if we don't, then we invest even more energy, often into the natural psychological subterfuge that human beings have, which is one of our traits. So yes, that's I think what I do.
I read a wonderful quote actually from you, and I hope I can share it. And this is what Alex wrote, and this is something that really intrigued me, and I found a real sort of connection with this. I'm going to read it out. When people come to me, they think that the therapy and the medicines is what the healing is. What I teach them is to do the work. They learn to face their demons, their shortcomings, to accept their genius, and to laugh at their follies. This journey of exploration and discovery, that is the healing. And that, Alex, is beautiful.
No. Well, did I write that?
Yes, you did.
God.
It's rather wonderful, I have to say. And my goodness, what a responsibility to really hold the hands of people in their healing journey, because it's quite a heavy work.
Well, in a way, it's heavy and it's light, because part of the growth as a healer is the recognition that God gave man choice and he never takes it away. So really their healing is their responsibility. My responsibility is support.
Yeah.
But the most difficult part for me, one of the most difficult parts for me, was that recognition, that was learning to recognize that this is people's choice. Regardless of what I see, regardless of what can be done, they choose. And I've seen people choose life. I've seen people choose death. And you really have to learn the discipline of respecting that.
This is a very difficult point. I was talking to somebody a few days ago, and a friend of mine has ended up in hospital, and we were talking to another friend, and we were discussing, how this all happened. And at one point I realized, because this other friend was trying to help her. And then I said to her, she chose this. She chose this. And I've heard it from mystics and sages that actually we choose this path in this world, and we agree to it when it's presented to us in the spiritual world. Before we come to earth, we are presented with that book of life to us, and we accept it. So everything that we see people going through, it's actually what they're supposed to be going through, including ourselves. So when we get to a point where we say, well, why did that happen? Why did I do this? Why did you didn't do that? We agreed that. We made a contract. We made a soul contract before we came to earth. And that's one of the most difficult things, I think, to accept as frail human beings as we are. And yet we are so powerful in another way, is that we accepted this, and we must let the play, so to speak, unfold in everyone's life. And our very presence to be, I suppose, like yourself, on a daily basis, is just to be there to support them. Because fundamentally, I don't think we can change anything in their destiny. The destiny is written.
Yeah, but I mean, this is something that I've spent years wrestling with.
Me too. Yeah, me too.
Let me give just some context before I go into this. I am a Muslim, and so and also a practicing Sufi. So wrestling with this, especially from within the Islamic tradition, has been something that I've really worked at. But then I also have an education which gives me a context. So, and there are two aspects of it, because the Greeks really loved to examine tragedy, the tragic. And in a Greek sense, the tragic was not tragedy as we understand it today as something terrible, but the fact that the outcome and you're moving inexorably to this outcome that but circumstances conspire to take you there. And this was their struggling with fate. And almost the mathematical patterns of when you do this, that will happen, and so on.
Yeah.
So that's been interesting. And so even before I was Muslim, I was struggling with these things. And there are two aspects that to decree or fate. There is one which is in Arabic is called qadr. And qadr is the sense of qadr is that grape trees produce grapes. They don't produce bananas. So there's an inherent there is an inherent nature within particular things, and you can't expect that. them to be different from what they are. And then there's another word which is called qada, which are like the paths. So you do this, and the permutations that are that it changes the permutations that are offered to you. So God gave man choice. He never takes that away. And his choice is also part of both the inherent nature and the paths open to you. And so as you progress and you move and you do things, often what emerges out of you are the things that are the contradictions and the struggles that are hidden inside of you manifest outside of you. And then you have to choose. You either choose the best you can or not. And then that presents you with a new set of possibilities. And you make that choice again. Now, God does not have time because God is the creator of time. So he is beyond time. So the beginning and the end are the same for God. But for man, we are in-time creatures. And as in-time creatures, we are constantly presented with this matter of choice. And often as we get further down the path of life, or we begin to be able to understand, we know what the choices are and what the consequences are. And the habitual nature of the way that we make those choices begins to become this matter that confronts us. So I mean, that's where I've gotten with this question and looking at it in terms of people's health. Because yes, you get to the point where there are perhaps types of relationships that you must change the parameters of. And and they often are so stressful that they have made us ill. And then we have to choose our pain, which is something I talk about in the clinic a lot. I say, you have to choose your pain. You can choose a pain that offers possibilities, or you could choose a pain that is a dead end. It just offers more pain and the same pain, and you know it.
Explain a little bit more about that, Alex, with regards to choosing the pain. Because I often wonder, as someone who has gone through a lot in my life, I clearly chose my pain for whatever reason. And I had one of those epiphanies the other day where I thought, well, look, you know what, Mimi? If you didn't have this pain, you wouldn't have got to where you are now in your life. You wouldn't have the understanding of what you understand. And also the complete understanding that you don't know anything anyway. So it's one of those moments. And that was rather sort of exhilarating, because I realized that, we came to this world, as Rumi said, and we're just tourists in this world. And even the pain is just something that we carry around like a suitcase, I think, from place to place until we decide to open it and have a look what's inside and deal with it, or just carry it on our back.
But like the dung beetle.
Yes. I mean, just put it down, but you can't, because our ego is a tricky thing where it just, it likes this drama and this suffering. And, we as souls don't want to suffer, but the ego is something that, it's a tricky thing, isn't it?
Well, I don't know. I mean, you're asking someone who's in the midst of struggling with the whole thing. I'm wrestling with the Hydra as I cut off one head, another 10 appear.
Yes.
So look, the price of choice is consequence. So,
yes. Mm.
as human beings, we are born into a context that gives the sum total of the consequences of our ancestors. So we're born into difficulty and benefits. And so in that, it will always present us with contradictions and issues and trauma and things that really work, like some families really work well in some ways and be completely dysfunctional in others. Some societies work well in some ways and are completely dysfunctional, and that's how it is.
Mm.
This is the price of this gift that we were given. And so when you become an adult, you are now part of the transmission of the consequences, and you have a choice what you're going to do about it. Now, the choosing the pain is to look or rather choosing your difficulty is to look at your circumstances and understand which of the paths that are offered to you is the best one. Now, often what we do is we continue blindly because we don't want to take the responsibility. We're caught in the space of blaming the others. Oh, they did this. Why did they do this? Or why did they give me this? How did this happen?
Mm.
But now you're an adult. And the Sufis call the people of realization, they call them the Rijal, which means men. But it doesn't actually mean men in that sense. It means adults, because women are also called the Rijal.
Mm. Mm.
So you've grown up, and you have to grow up. So you're physically grown up, but now you have to grow up. And the spiritual journey is about growing up. And so the choices that we have, we have to understand the peculiar difficulties. All of them will have difficulties. There is not a choice which doesn't. If you took LSD, it has a wonderful you may have a wonderful experience, but then you have to wake up the next day.
Yes.
And so on.
Yeah.
Okay. Or it may go bad. As they call it, your trip went bad. So
Yeah.
so always there are choices, and as you continue you become aware of the consequences. So choosing your pain is choosing the path that's most pregnant with possibilities for yourself.
Now, you talk about the Sufis, which are very close to my heart. Tell us a little bit about your love of them. And I know that for people out there listening, the most famous Sufis that they talk about is Jalaluddin Rumi and Hafiz. And these are all famous, that are being made in the West. But it's more than the whirling dervishes. It's much more. For people out there listening, tell us a little bit, Alex, about who the Sufis are.
Well, they always said that Sufism began as a reality without a name, and now is a name without a reality.
Yeah.
The Sufi is the one that deliberately takes a path to the purification of their inner selves. So what has always struck me about the Sufis, and I'm talking about really genuine Sufis, is the character of the people. They're quite incredibly noble, but also incredibly alive, with an incredible inner life. And so that my encounter with Islam really began in the company of Sufis. So I accidentally met Sufis and couldn't keep away from them just because of their character.
As one does.
Yeah. I was just amazed at their character. I had never seen such refined character. And I come from a tradition that values nobility. And it was, so I recognized nobility, but they took it to the nth degree. I saw men who would, and women who would take the clothes off their backs and hand it to you. That if you ate with them, would make sure that you ate the best bits. And they'd always prefer their companions over themselves. And they were incredibly forgiving. And then but also in their presence, your heart would come alive. And you just knew that this person, there was just something. In their company, your heart's alive. And away from them, you'd go back to your everydayness, and then you come back with them. And so I couldn't escape them once I'd met them. Yeah. So
it's difficult to describe. It is difficult to describe.
So actually, there's a verse which I'm thinking about of the Quran, which goes, "Yu'allimhumul kitab," teach them the book, which is the Quran, wal hikmah, and the wisdom, which is the way of the Prophet, wa yuzakkihim, and purify them. And Sufism is spoken about as the science of purification, which is this tazkiyah, the purification. But it is based upon wisdom. It is a wisdom way. And it is like Jalaluddin Rumi and Hafiz were all, what today they call mullahs. They were steeped in law and they embodied it. And so they went to a spiritual life in order to make sure that the embodiment was right through. There was no contradiction left inside of them. And that is, as I understand it, the Sufi way.
Yes, I have met many of them. And once they sort of alight on your life is never the same. And there is that yearning, I think, because there is a reality of the divine that sort of shines around them. And I remember being I don't know, have you been to Egypt, Alex, at all?
No, I haven't, no.
Okay, so I was in Alexandria one year, and we were there, and we had gone on this spiritual sort of trip that we wanted to go to as many holy places and as many sort of mystical places in the world. So Egypt has to be and we just kept returning all the time there, because it's just like, if you haven't been to Egypt, then you haven't been anywhere, the old saying goes. But I was in Alexandria, and there was, I don't know, about 10 dervishes. And I'm talking real dervishes, because you could see in their face that they were not present really in this world. And their faces shone. And in a way, if you tried to put your hand to them, your hand would have sort of gone through them. It was something surreal, totally. And I remember I fell in love with these dervishes. And my friend said to me, "Where are you going?" And, they were playing the drums, and they were, reciting and doing their famous zikr, as they call it. and they were just spinning around, and they had all these different colored clothes on that were patched. I mean, in the real sense, it was round a holy shrine. In the real sense, true dervishes, you could tell. And
was that Abul Abbas al-Mursi's shrine?
I can't remember now. There's so many, thank the Lord, that so many that I visited that I can't even remember. I've written it all down as we would travel, and I would write it because I would never remember it with my memory. But my friends were sort of a little bit mesmerized. No, that was it for me, Alex. They were playing the flute, and, they were banging their drums, and that was it. I was off. And I don't know what happened to me. And my friends who were with me at the time said, "Where are you going?" I said, "I'm going with them." They said, "You can't, what do you mean you're going with them?" That was it. I went, and we were going down the road, and I was going with them. And then all of a sudden, one of them turned around and looked at me, and my friend grabbed me. And she said, "You can't go with them." And she actually lived in Cairo, and she was taking us around. So I said, "But I want to be with them. This is what's real." And in that moment, I was back again. But that experience, amongst many, many others, was, the real proof and the remembrance for me that you can really, as that old adage goes, you can be in this world, but not of this world.
Of this world, yes.
Yeah.
Which is the quality of the Sufi, in this world, but not of it.
Yeah, yeah. And the most eccentric people also, I have to say. Beautifully so.
Well, yeah, because I remember the first thing that happened with myself is that my expectations of life was shattered. There's something about that path in which they demolish your expectations so that you can emerge.
Yes.
And that is usually quite a traumatic experience, actually. But then after you emerge out of that free, with a freedom that you did not expect, but alienated from the people around you. And they talk about that a lot in the texts. And I remember reading that stuff and not understanding it, but coming out and going, I went, "Oh, okay, so that's what happened." Yeah.
Die before you die.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes, before. And as I said, we forget so many things, and we have forgotten. And the time really now is to have that remembrance of who we are. And unless we know who we are, we can never know who anyone else is. We can never help anyone unless we've helped ourselves and in a way gone through that chasm of fire that I think all of us go through daily in some way. We're constantly, being put through the fire in order to come out as this purified being, because Earth is not so clean in a lot of ways, and our physical reality needs to go through that, I think, and isn't it?
Well, life is quite messy. Thank God.
Yeah, indeed.
And once you accept the messiness of life, then you can turn your attention to just becoming a better person.
Yeah.
But often what we want is that we have these idealistic, we get these idealistic castings of what life should be. We tend to use the word "should" a lot, but "should" means that the thing didn't happen. So I find that the path is really about the acceptance of things as they are. Like people, I remember For me, my part of my education was that, you in I remember studying a compendium of Islamic law, and by the time I came through the other end, I had a really good idea of the kinds of things that human beings do. Both the most noble and the worst proclivity.
Yeah.
But then you can accept a human being as having all of these possibilities, and then you can also accept yourself as having all of those possibilities. It's easier to forgive yourself and to recognize that these things can come out of you. And if you put yourself in those circumstances, maybe the next time don't put yourself in those circumstances, avoid them. And if you're in, remember the issues, so that you can move from guilt towards a very active way of dealing with your mess. Because when people come to my clinic, I tell the pep talk goes that I will teach you to become a shit shoveler. Problem is that the more shit you shovel is the more you find.
Yeah, isn't that the truth?
Yeah, and that's the work.
Yeah.
So we want people. What I've seen is, especially in the West, is that we want a utopia. But if you study the literature of the world, our own literature, you'll see that there's always the warning that utopias look good, but they always end up terrible.
Yeah.
They always end up tyrannical. And so we want utopian. We want a utopian escape. But life is life. It's both terrible and beautiful, and you have to accept both faces of it. And often in retrospect, the terrible becomes beautiful, because you realize that there are things within you and things that the terrible event brought forth or changed. And this is life, this is life. It's not clean. It's quite messy.
It is, absolutely. And it is about also, that I found in life, it's about keeping one's souls clean and not to let it, and one's heart, and to not let all that goes out around there externally penetrate the heart and the soul, and to protect it from such things, because that's a completely another story, I think. If it starts to affect our soul and our heart, that's another form of sickness, isn't it, Alex?
Well, the thing is that we've built a civilization, which is a consumeristic civilization. It's a consumer society. So it's based upon things are produced and we have to buy them. So often what happens is that things that we would do socially, our communities would produce, those are taken away and sold back to us. And so there is, within our society is a sense of a loss of autonomy. Because if we were autonomous, we would not be a consumer society. And so what you get is that so that they are just normally things that we have, but the kinds of social infrastructure that we had before that could support someone through the nonsense of life is gone. And now we've replaced it with therapy, or we're trying to replace that with therapy. So for our situation, yes, there are these things which would penetrate our beings, or do penetrate our beings. And in our time, we're particularly naked. So to them, we don't have defenses. The normal social defenses are gone. So the thing that I find interesting about Sufism is that it gives you a way of dealing with your core. So there's one with which you regularly clean your core with something like dhikr. And the other one is in which you regularly, there's a thing called zuhud. And zuhud means that is doing without. So you do without the extra. So you release things that no longer serve you or that you noticed might enslave you. You don't know how to deal with that particular thing, so you learn to turn away from those things. So these types of habits help us to travel, and then you don't become a person who is just a consumer without awareness. You realize that when I take that thing, the way I take it changes me. What I want from it changes me. So there's this incredible awareness that human beings need, because the world is not the world is not neutral. It's alive, and when you take something, you also take its energy, but you also turn to the energetic possibilities that you desire out of it. And I think that I don't know if I think that's what I see in what you said.
Yes, there is that. It's the day of sayings today, but the Sufi saying of it is not that you should not own anything, but that nothing should own you.
Mm-hmm.
And I always think about that in my life, even when I'm buying the smallest of things. And sometimes, I wanted to buy a plant and I love it, love it, love it. And then I think, Mimi, just calm down, because, you're just going over the top. And I wanted to buy these cordyline plants and I just loved them. And I wanted to put them everywhere. And I thought, no. And I wanted to buy 10 because I love them. And then my heart said to me, you don't need 10, but I love 10, but you don't need 10. And we made a deal, and then I bought 2. But I understood that, because even 2 then became a little bit of an excess. I thought, oh dear, why did I buy 2? I should have bought 1. And, so I understand what you're saying. And, but Alex, I wanted to ask you whether you have this feeling as I do, where when I'm looking now at people in the world, it is a completely different thing to when I was, say, looking back at people when I was young, when I was, I was, then a child. But it seems that people do not realize that they do have free will. Does that make sense? It's like, you do actually have free will, do I?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's the major thing that I've seen since my childhood to being an adult now, is that I thought that when you grew up, so to speak, as you were talking about earlier, becoming an adult, you would realize that you had that free will and you could choose to do as you liked and, make your mistakes along the way. But it seems to me now that, especially people that I'm encountering, they don't realize that they have a free will.
Well, okay, there are 2 things here, right? Is free. The term free will came from the Greeks, and I've always had a problem with the free part of it, because how do you define that free? Okay.
Yeah, true.
And it always gets messy. So I like to look. I found it much easier to understand if we spoke about choice. You have the capacity to choose.
Yes.
Now, this is really fast. I don't know if you've ever read Dickens's Hard Times.
No, I haven't.
Okay, so Charles Dickens has this book called Hard Times, and he's looking at the development of what is a bourgeois society and the nature of education and the nature of, because remember that in Dickens's times, schools were really a new thing.
Mm-hmm.
So mass education had only started happening after the end of the 1800s. So after the 1860s, that's when mass education begins to really happen.
Mm.
And Dickens is exploring many of the issues with that in Hard Times. It's really a fascinating read. But part of what happens is that once you've gone through a modern education, it's like naturally children would look at the world and they'd work out what that color was by themselves.
Mm.
They'd work out what tall and short was by themselves. And they would encounter you, or they would come in a conversation with you, they would explore that. Right. But one of the things that Dickens looks at is that the teacher goes, okay, what color is this? And until the teacher says it's blue, it's not blue.
Mm.
And he really, I think that made him profoundly uncomfortable. And in terms of modern man, is that we have a society which says that we are free to choose. But if you give man complete freedom to choose, you have anarchy. So there's a point at which you've got to politically, you have to put some controls in place. And those are psychological. And psychology is based upon our relationships. So we talk about what's normal. But there is nothing called normality. Each human being is unique, very different. But normality is a standard by which a society is made to conform. And it's an essential part of being human. But often what I find with people is it takes about at least 18 months for them to begin to wrestle with the fact that they have choice once you start to deal with that and they accept their choices without attempting to push the responsibility onto someone else, which just disempowers them.
That's an interesting thing, that it would be anarchy. And yet, we are free beings, though.
Yeah.
Our souls are caged by our body.
Mm-hmm.
But our soul is free. That is not confined to any sort of time and space or constriction. Only the fact that while we are here on earth, we are enclosed in our body.
Yeah, and situated within a social nexus.
Yeah.
And context. So part of being human is that without those constraints, you could not realize your humanity.
Yes, yeah. It's like a mirror. I mean, if you and I were not talking, I wouldn't be listening to what you're saying, and your wisdom is reflecting upon me, and your mirror is, mirroring something, inside of me. So unless we didn't have everybody around us, well, would we be aware of ourselves even?
Yeah, because there are these possibilities which they lie dormant within us.
Mm.
the context brings them out. So that is, and that is the also the situation with the creator, is that the creator is there with an infinitum of possibilities, and then he and we use he, which is linguistic, because the creator is without sex. He then decides to create. So this creation is one possibility.
It's true. And so, I know that you talk that you have a passion about understanding the pattern languages. And that's something that interests me, is patterns. Now, are we talking about also sort of the sacred geometry of things?
Well, the sacred geometry exists because they're patterns. The creation is patterns, so the sacred geometry is man's exploration of those patterns in geometry, which was a branch of mathematics.
I saw something. Sorry to interrupt you, but before I forget, I saw something, and I'm sure you've seen this and know about this, Alex. But when you play sound, and that sound, when you play it to water, in effect, the water takes on a pattern. And I find that absolutely incredible, because we are, 75% water. So we are constantly in this perpetual motion of this divine pattern that is playing out within us, around us. And if we could, in a way, become part of that flow, things would be a whole lot easier, I think.
But we are part of the flow.
But we don't have that awareness at all times.
Yeah, if we can become if we can become actively part of the flow.
Yes,
right, because we're part of it.
Yeah.
But what a lot of times we're raging against the flow.
Absolutely.
And complaining that it hurts.
It's true. I had the feeling, I don't know about you, but when I'm going against the flow of myself, I always say, I'm feeling spiky. And my family will say to me, what do you mean you're feeling spiky? I said, I don't know, but it doesn't feel that it's running in the correct direction. And then I have to really consciously turn it around, do something to center myself and to get back into that again.
Yeah. And so the Sufis talk about the opposites, because the creation is created in opposites. And so in this case, losing is finding. So because you lost it, you become aware that something's missing or something's not right. So then you turn to look for it, so you find it. So they say losing is finding. And also finding is losing. Because once you found it, then you lost the dissonance. But we're alive.
Yeah.
And so, harmony and dissonance are part of existence. So if you only want harmony, good luck to you. You're not the Lord. You didn't create it.
Yeah.
And so, this struggle with the opposites, for the Greeks, there was the Apollyon order and the Dionysian chaos. And in the story of Oedipus and Dionysus, Oedipus, the story of Oedipus, where Oedipus is caught in this tragic story. His father abandons him because the father has heard that he will kill him. He meets his father on the path and he kills the father, who is the king. He marries the queen because he has become the king. Jocasta, who is the queen, turns out to be his mother. He doesn't know. She doesn't know. Yeah.
Good old Oedipus complex. Yeah.
Which Freud took out as a principle, that one aspect. But the whole thing is this whole thing of tragedy. of being caught in the inexorable web, which your decisions are further compounding you. You don't know, but the end is clear. So then Oedipus is really confronted with this dilemma that he has unknowingly been part of this terrible crime. But is he a criminal? And does he have to accept it? And then there's the priest Creon, who then speaks to him and confronts him with the crime as if he's guilty. And in the classic story, he digs out his eyes in despair. So this aspect of the society and man and the knotted paths which we are confronted with, and man's choice, and that your choice will often take you in the direction that you thought you were escaping. And so that the price of choice is this need for man to have really deep reflection, because you will not escape that except by reflecting on the patterns and learning how to choose. And the people who will present you with the keys do not appear until you have really reflected upon and confronted those patterns yourself. So this is this man as the picture of man as a divine dance.
Oh, yes.
We lost it in our civilizational path. Yeah, so it's almost like we thought, as a civilization, we thought that the crime of African slavery would never affect us. But then, that in order to justify the crime, there was the creation of a white and a black races, white and black races, because when Europeans came over to the Americas, they were French and German, etc. So you had to create a white race, and then down through in the 20th century, we get Hitler, who takes that philosophy to the nth degree. Right? So we are in a divine dance. Our choices have consequences, and they change the nature of the way of the dance. And so it takes very special men and women, or not very. How could I say it? I mean, it takes men and women who choose to confront the savory and the unsavory, or the beautiful or the lovely, and the unsavory of who we are.
Understanding this divine dance, though, and that we are in this divine dance with, this symphony of God that's playing. I was once with a great master, and he was talking about this particular subject, and also about the power of music, and how that when God created us, he created us with his hands and, shaped us with the clay. And then he blew his breath into us. And at that point, we were absolutely joyful to be created. And God sang to us, and we began to dance. So I think this divine dance is something that, since our moment of creation, has been playing out, so to speak. And I think it's important for me as a person, as a soul, and I think for every single person out there, is to do your part, to play your part in this great dance of life?
Well, you know, we by the time we've grown up, we're quite knotted and blind to our centers and our possibilities and part of the dance. So then you have a you offer the possibility of recognizing that you're in the dance and then choosing to dance knowingly because you're dancing anyway.
Yeah. I love that. I love that. And that is really, Alex, part of your work.
Yeah.
I suppose is reminding people that they're dancing.
Yeah.
Yeah. The maestro.
And I have a book which I've written, or a series of books which are called the Know Yourself books.
Yes, tell us a little bit about that for people out there that want to know more about what you do.
Well, this is you find that it shows you how the personalities of people are in harmony with the four seasons.
Mm-hmm.
So it really is about you grasping that your personality, your psychological makeup is patterned, and other people's are also patterned, and so they may be singing from a slightly different place, and so you can't be a grape and decide that you're going to be a banana.
Yeah.
And you can't take a banana and force it to be a grape. And that each of these brings something very different. So Know Yourself is about it's taken out of Sufism, a way of really recognizing the patterns of personality of people. And it's also the same, it's the same group of the four elements that the Greeks spoke about. And is used in Greco-Arab medicine. So the medicine of Hippocrates, which really was further developed with the Arabs, and then came back to medieval Europe. So that way, it takes out this thing of the four patterns of human beings, and the way that all of us can see ourselves in these combinations. So the elements combine, and all of the elements are found in each of us. So it's really about you beginning to understand the part you play in the dance. Like some people are thinkers. They have to think something through before they do it.
Yeah.
And some people do it and then discover what's in it. And those people tend to be quite spring-like. They're colorful. They love to communicate. They can cry and laugh in the same minute. And the other type that has to think it through are the introverted. Because they think something through, if you do something to them, they figure that you've thought about it too. And they love to save up things because they're naturally a bit pessimistic, so they don't expect things to last. Whereas the spring type of person expects things to last forever. So, tomorrow will take care of itself. So
is this similar to the Enneagram, Alex?
Well, the Enneagram is an exploration of another aspect of it, which comes out of the Naqshbandi, or reflection on these matters and the patterns of man.
Yes.
So so another Sufic order called the Naqshbandi, which is very prevalent in the East, the carpet weavers developed the Enneagram.
Mm-hmm.
So it's another way of approaching it.
And is this something that you use within your work, these patterns in your practices? Because you're a herbalist, but what else do you do? You do Chinese medicine, Ayurvedic medicine?
Yeah, well, the thing when I started out, I was very doctrinal. Okay, I am doing Unani Tib, and I very quickly came to the conclusion that my patients really didn't care what kind of medicine I was practicing. They wanted to get well.
Yeah.
So I then worked at just really being clear and uncomplicated with that. So I studied other forms of medicine in order to become a better healer. So yes, I'm more focused on solving the patient's problem rather than just turning around. Okay, well, I can only look at this from modern. I'm only going to practice an evidence-based approach, which is something that's hit herbalism today, which is that they want evidence-based approaches, and often will ignore, volumes of the tradition because they're not valid in their schema of knowledge. Yeah. So I had to decide that no, I'm going to. So that's what I do. I'm a herbalist who is influenced by many of the traditions. I mean, and there's the medicine of the Amazon, which everybody likes to believe is only American Indian. But for the last 300 years, Africans, Indians, people from Asia, etc., we've been mixing. And so our medicine has changed and has reflected that mixing. So yes, I and it's really fascinating because I think that creolization has really influenced my approach.
Mm-hmm.
Because my approach is really, as I've reflected on, it's quite a Creole approach, and I'm a Creole, so that's not surprising.
Yeah, and I want to ask you, what are the names of the books that you have written?
The name is Know Yourself.
Mm-hmm.
The whole series is Know Yourself. So there's Know Yourself. Then there's Know Yourself Sanguine. And now I'm looking at an unpublished one, which is Know Yourself Choleric, which is finished. It just needs to be, the editing and layout just needs to be finished. So, and then there'll be Know Yourself Melancholic, and then Know Yourself Phlegmatic. So it's just the types. It really is just an exploration of each one of those types. And I think in the European tradition, we know what it is to be melancholic or to be sanguine.
Yes. My friend is very much into that. Yeah. I'm going to give her the details. And is it available on Amazon?
Available on Amazon, yes. Yes.
Okay. Then that's something for the listeners out there who want to know more about these absolutely fascinating subjects. They can have a look at your book and also your website. Where can people get hold of you, Alex?
The easiest thing to do is just go to Google and type Alex Carberry.
Mm-hmm.
Right, which then links you through, because I'm on Instagram. It's alexander.carberry.
Okay.
I have a company called Carberry Botanicals that makes herbal tonics.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and I run. Yeah, so you'll find me. That's how you'll find me.
And do you make your own herbal products?
I do, yeah.
And where can people buy that?
Again, Carberry Botanicals. Yeah, if they go to, the easiest way to find me, to find those, are to go to my Instagram and follow the link in my bio.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, for people who want to, I shall have a look at that. Actually, that sounds very interesting. Now, it's been an absolute pleasure to talk to you today, Alex. Really, what a wise soul, really. I could talk and talk to you for days, really, because there's so much to learn from you, and you show the world in a different light, which is a gift.
Yeah, well.
And I know you're very humble. I know you're very humble.
Oh well, I don't know. I don't know if I'm very humble. I think I'm quite big-headed.
I think you're very humble.
But I wrestle. The one thing is I find is that one has to commit to wrestling with yourself and your age. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I committed.
Oh dear, I know we're always wrestling something. My friend, I always say, she said, it's a test. I think we spoke about it. It's a test. Why does everything have to be a test? And it's because life is a test. So we're always wrestling something. There's always one test. And once you've defeated one thing, another thing comes up. But I think, really praise be to God that we are here on this planet and that we have this chance and this gift. And that really, in effect, we were chosen for this journey. So there's a lot to be grateful for
because we could have been we could have come out as two earthworms.
Thank God I didn't. I always say when I see something, I say, thank you, God, for not creating me an insect. I have a thing about insect. This is my thing for the past few podcasts. But thank you that I'm a human being and that I'm very happy.
Yeah, but if you were an insect, you'd have been praising God for being an insect.
Yeah, this is true. This is true. Oh, dear. Thank you so much, Alex. And what's your website address? I have to put it out there for the listeners.
It's www.alexcarbery.net and alexcarbery.co.uk.
Okay, now a couple of lines of your wise words, Alex, to people out there who may be going through something or who are struggling in their own way, something that has helped you.
It will pass. That seasons are changing. What happened to you is not you. It happened to you, or it's happening to you. And that the season will change. So endure and have hope. And recognize that life is messy and it's not the way that you want it to be. It is the way that it is. And as certainly as the terrible happens, certainly the beautiful will also.
How very beautiful. My goodness. So, so beautiful, Alex. Thank you. Come again, please, and share your wisdom, your knowledge, because people really need it. People really are in need of it. And you are always welcome to come on again.
No, thank you. And thank you for giving me an opportunity to actually think about some of these things.
You're very welcome. You're very welcome. I wish you a joyful day and
thank you.
And a day with ease that passes with ease and peace.
Yes. Okay. Well, and thank you for having me. And I wish you a glorious life.
Thank you. Likewise. And that's filled with beautiful moments and angelic realms that protect you and your loved ones always.
Oh, thank you. I mean, and to you also.
Oh, okay, Alex. Take care.
And you.
Okay. Right. Bye-bye. Bye.
Bye.
Alex Carbery. Amazing. So many things that we can learn from each other, and the more people that we meet, the more we can learn about ourselves. Thank you so much for joining me today. As always, look after yourselves and lots of love.
Thank you for listening to Secrets for an Inspirational Life, brought to you by your host, Mimi Novick. Please remember to subscribe to the podcast, and see you in the next episode. For more information about Mimi Novick and her books, music, and inspirational work, take a look at her website, www.miminovick.co.uk.